Hi, I'm historian and author Claire Ridgway, and in today's episode, I'm joined by someone who brings the soundscape of the Tudor and Elizabethan world vividly to life. I'm talking to Jane Moulder, musician, researcher, instrument maker, and a founding member of PIVA, the Renaissance Collective. If you've ever wondered what music actually sounded like in Elizabeth I's court or in the streets and taverns of 16th century England, this conversation is for you. Jane and I talk about PIVA's stunning new album, The Faerie Round, music from the time of Elizabeth I, and how it captures the energy, elegance, and sheer joy of Renaissance music. We discuss how the group chooses and reconstructs pieces from the 16th century, how their extraordinary instruments, shawms, bagpipes, crumhorns, curtals, and recorders shape their sound, and why this album has been such a labour of love. Jane also shares what it's like to perform on instruments that she and her husband have actually made themselves, and the challenges of recording early music for modern audiences, and the research that inspires her work. It's a fascinating blend of scholarship, craftsmanship, and musicianship. And I think you'll love hearing how history comes alive through PIVA's music. So settle in. Here's my conversation with Jane about the Faerie Round. A very warm welcome, Jane Moulder, to my Anne Boleyn Files YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to interviewing you and grilling you.
No, crikey. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So can we just start off, because I don't know whether my followers have come across you before, but could you just introduce yourself for us and tell us a bit about who you are?
Okay. Well, thanks, Claire. As you said, I'm Jane Moulder, and I'm a musician, a researcher, a writer, a musical instrument maker, and just someone who spends basically most of their life immersed in some part of the 16th century. So the instruments that I make are based on historical woodwinds of the Renaissance. The music I play is Renaissance dance and popular music. And I have written for the Tudor Society in the past, for Tudor Life magazine. And I used to have a regular column in that. And I suppose the only thing that veers away from the 16th century is my love of bagpipes. And I am editor of Chanter, which is the journal of the Bagpipe Society. So that does definitely, although bagpipes are big in the 16th century, I'm a bit more out there.
You just live the dream, really, don't you? 16th century, 16th century,
Yeah, well, as
16th
you can see,
century.
I've got a few books behind me as well. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your music, and I mean, you're in the group PIVA,
Yeah.
PIVA. So, for
Yeah.
those people out there who haven't discovered PIVA yet, could you start off by telling us just a bit about PIVA, how the group first came together, and who the members are as well?
Okay, well, the group was formed in 2002, so we've been going for some time now. We've had a few changes of lineup, but basically the group was formed by my husband and partner in crime, Eric Moulder, who is also he is the instrument maker. I often describe myself as the apprentice that never got fired. So I work with Eric. So Eric is the instrument maker, and I suppose we both of us have had a love of Renaissance dance music. As I said, we make the instruments of the period. And so it just befell, really, let's start a group to play our instruments and to get the music out there. And we specifically chose the latter part of the 16th century, the popular dance music, because nowadays it's a period that really is overlooked. Um, the secular dance, popular music of the 16th century, early music, which is the broad category which it falls under, which goes from anything from early medieval right through to sort of late Baroque. As it's become more mainstream, the focus has been much more on medieval music and on Baroque music, or from the 16th century, the more sacred music, the bird, the talus, the wonderful uh, choral polyphonies. That's really where it's at. And there were very, very few groups really concentrating on this repertoire. And we said, come on, let's start a group. So we started a group back in 2002. We called it PIVA. Which I can tell you about if you know want to know why we called it
Oh, yes,
that.
please.
But we've made it a little bit different because I mean we're woodwind players, Eric and myself, but we've always had a sort of a string element in it. So we've had people who've played the violin or the viol, which was a stringed instrument of the period. We've had Renaissance guitars. We've had guests coming in playing lute. So it's unusual to have a wind band that has strings in it as well, because you often get just string ensemble or wind ensembles. So we've liked that mix. And our full title is PIVA, the Renaissance Collective. So it means that we can pull in other musicians and guest artists if we feel that there's a particular program or repertoire that we want to explore that has other people's skills in it. So PIVA, why
Yes,
PIVA?
I want
Well,
to know. I want
okay,
to
so
know the history of the
it's
name.
a lot. Well, it just sums us up because we are basically we're a good time band. We are playing pop music of the 16th century, and we wanted to sort of a name that was quite short and snappy, but also said about what we were. And Piva is, if you go to North Italy to the Veneto, you will find that Piva is a type of bagpipe. It's the local bagpipe to Northeast Italy. It's also sort of late 15th, early 16th century dance. There is a Piva. It's also a dance step. There's a specific dance step. And it's also a shawm, which is a sort of an instrument we play from this area. So we just thought, yeah, it's about dance, it's about music, it's about the instruments we play. And then a sort of audience member came up to us after about a year and said, did you know that piva was also the Russian for beer? So we thought, yep, we've absolutely got the right name for the group. And there is another coincidence that we found out about later that we just knew that we had called our group the right name because there's a family of instrument makers and musicians who I might well be talking about later called the Bassanos. And the Bassanos were brought over by Henry VIII when he wanted to try and modernize his court and bring the best of Europe to the English court. And he went out to deliberately try and encourage musicians from all around Europe to come and play at his court. And the Bassanos at that time, and there were six brothers, were playing for the Doge of Venice. And the Bassanos were brought over and enticed over with lots of incentives by Henry, and they came over and they were appointed the king's recorder consort. And they basically stayed and settled in England and were royal musicians right through until the court of King Charles II. And Eric and I have done a huge amount of research on the Bassanos. And one of those little gems that came out that was that spine tingling moment was that when they were called Bassanos because they had come from the town of Bassano del Grappa, which is famous. If you like grappa, you'll know exactly why the town is famous. But also, it was famous for its silk. So they were silk merchants as well. And their symbol was a silk moth. And that mark is on their instruments. But when they lived in Bassano, their surname was Piva.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it was just like, and this was probably we'd called our group PIVA for maybe 2 or 3 years before we'd
Mm.
found this little bit of research, and we were just it was just spine tingling. It was great.
Brilliant. So how many members have you got in PIVA at the moment, and what
Uh,
are their sort of backgrounds? What do they play?
well, for the first time ever, we are purely a wind band, which is it feels a bit bizarre. There are five of us at the moment. So there's myself and Eric, and then there is Jude Reese. And she's a what I we call a whiz. She's a professional oboist, but she's also she's now veering into the realms of electronic music as well. But she's got a foot firmly in the folk world. She's famous in folk circles, and as a classical oboist, but she specializes in early woodwinds. So she plays, and she was originally a customer of ours, and we got to know her. So she plays double reed instruments, she plays recorder. And then we have David Jarrett Knock, who again plays double reed woodwinds and recorders, but he also plays an amazing instrument called the cornetto, which is it's an incredibly difficult instrument to play and is it's the pinnacle of woodwind instrument playing. And it was in the 16th century, it was recognized that the cornetto was the elite of the woodwind instruments. And it's quite unusual, and it's classed as a woodwind instrument, but you play it with a brass mouthpiece, a very, very small mouthpiece. And it has an incredibly vocal quality. And David also plays Renaissance guitar. And then we have Tony Milliard, who is the only other original member of the group. And he plays bagpipes and recorders and woodwinds. And then he also plays an instrument called a hurdy-gurdy, which you may or may not be familiar with. But that's another whole instrument. But we have another member of the group who is our string player, Kate Moran, but she's in Hong Kong. She went and got married and inconsiderately decided to move to Hong Kong. She's still in the band. She's coming over to join us. We run a residential music course each year, and she's coming back from Hong Kong just to take part in that, because it is just a temporary. Well, she keeps saying it's temporary, but she's been there 2 years. So yeah, so Kate is an amazing violin player, and she again is in the classical world and runs orchestras, and she's also in the Baroque world and in the folk world. So yeah, we've got a real mix of people.
Hmm.
And
Now,
on
oh,
our
go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say on our latest CD, there's another person called Mary Moen, who is our
Okay.
viol player, and she sadly had to leave the group for personal reasons earlier last year. So earlier this year. So yeah, so we've been in a state of flux. So
Hmm. Okay. Now you've mentioned your album there, but
yeah.
before we move on to talking about the new album, yeah, how many albums have you done, and how has Piva's sound sort of evolved over that time?
Okay, well, this will be our third. So we've got two other CDs. The first CD, which came out in 2010, was of English music and dance. Our second CD, which was 2016, that was Italian music. So again, the same period, late 16th century, but all Italian music. And then this our third CD is we've returned to England, our homeland.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations on
Thank
this album. It's called the Faerie Round. It really is beautiful. It's been described as stunningly beautiful as well.
you.
So, what was your vision for this album when you began? And whose idea was it? How did
Well,
it come about?
well, we did. I mean, this, as I said, I gave the dates of the CDs. So our second CD, the Morisco, was 2016, and the aim was to go straight in and do another CD straight away. Well, we're 9 years on, so it's been a bit of a journey. So the I what we we sort of focus on music from Europe, but we love English music and we love Italian music. And we are and we are always researching and trying to find good English instrumental dance music. And it is quite difficult. And we had sort of started down this journey. So we said, come on, let's get another English CD going because we were beginning to put this repertoire into our programs. It was getting really great responses, and people were saying, have you got this on your CD? No. Have you got that track on your CD? No. So that really was the driver. Come on, we're doing all of this great music. We're making our own arrangements using this quite, sort of eclectic style with all these different influences coming in from, as I said, from the folk world, from the classical world and jazz and whatever. So let's try and do something with it. And thus began quite a long story. So, but yeah, 9 years later, here we are.
Yes. 9 years. That's like the book that I've been writing since 2012. Yeah. Oh. So the subtitle is Music from the Time of
Yeah.
Elizabeth I. And is it purely because the people kept saying, is that track on it? Is that track on it? Is that
Yeah.
why you wanted to focus on
Well, we
this
wanted to
particular
say,
period?
I suppose there's something about Elizabethan music that's really quite special to us. It
Mm.
resonates with us. I think from the point of view that this really was the height, the late 16th century was the height of the English musical renaissance. And there was there had been an English style, but it was still getting very influenced by Europe. There were a lot of European musicians in the Tudor court. Um, but it was really towards the sort of 1580s that it was saying, oh yeah, this is English music. This isn't England trying to be like Italy. This isn't England trying to have that Flemish sound or the French Burgundian sound that you had in Henry's time. This is English music. And it was quite a hit in Europe. It was like, and you start getting European composers and musicians looking to England, which is a real turnabout from what it had been in the 1530s and 1540s with Henry. So it's really the height of English music. England was very settled as a country. We weren't, okay, there was the Spanish, but we were quite a settled place. We had troubles, the economy and the social life was undergoing, but it was undergoing change, but it was still quite settled. And I think that enabled things to really bed down. And Elizabeth herself had a huge influence over music. She was, without doubt, a music lover. She was a very able musician, probably far more able than her father, Henry. Um, and it's really clear that she had an influence over English musical style as well. And I think what we were trying to do was to sort of pay homage to Elizabeth, and I'm a big fan of Elizabeth. I think she's as a monarch and what she did and how she managed the political economic situation and all that was thrown at her. I mean, it's a bit of a personal one for me as well.
So would you say that, Elizabeth's golden age, it really was a golden age for
It
English
really
music,
was. I
definitely.
think it really was a golden age for English music. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, so it's like, and I think if you look back um, at English music of this period, you've got the English madrigal is just stunning. It's such a wealth of repertoire, and you've got people like William Burden. I mean, as I said, we're not focusing on the church music, but if you look at that English choral polyphony, I mean, it's just meltingly gorgeous. I mean, it is very um, intelligent, emotional music that I don't think we'd seen before in this country. And but then there's also these beautiful lute songs, and you've got John Dowland, and there's just, and the keyboard music from this period is great. What there isn't is a lot of consort music, which is what PIVA plays. That's not come down to us, which is way where we like the challenge.
Mm. So I mean, you talked about this album being a journey, like a personal kind of journey for the group as well. But it's a journey in itself. It's contemplative in parts, rousing in others. So how did you decide on the order of the tracks?
Well, that was all down to me. That's my job. The reason being is that it basically, I'm glad you picked that up because that was quite deliberate, and it really follows our format for our programs, for our concerts and presentations. Um, we like to there are a lot of different sounds in PIVA, the different oral sounds, because we have, as I've mentioned, some of the instruments which some of your listeners might not be familiar with. So I think people understand what a recorder is, um, and a guitar, Renaissance guitar, and but might not, and violin, of course, and maybe have heard viols. So they are what we call the low instruments, the softer instruments. But then we have these instruments called shawms and dulcians or curtals. And these are the louder instruments. These are reed instruments. So the shawm was the predecessor of today's oboe. And the dulcian or curtal is the ancestor of today's bassoon. So if you think of them as sounding like old oboes or old bassoons, you get the idea. And the cornet, this amazing instrument, sort of falls in the middle of them. It's this very vocal instrument that can be that sits above the soundscape of the recorders, but is below the shawms. So so what you've got is a mix of different instruments and a mix of sort of natural sound levels before anything is enhanced or mic'd up or anything like that. And so when we plan a concert, we like to start with something that's really quite rousing, quite a fanfare or a stridenty piece on these loud instruments. And then we sort of bring from this really sort of strong opening, we bring the sound quite down to some much more quieter, contemplative pieces. And then as we're working towards the interval, we want to bring the mood up. So we bring out the bagpipes or we bring out the hurdy-gurdy and get it a bit more upbeat. And then we do the same for the second half. So that's it. So our album really is a program. It's two halves. So you start off with something quite loud, you come down, move up a bit in the middle, go down again, and then hopefully get to the last big rousing piece. So that's how we do it.
Oh, this will make you laugh because Tim and I were talking about this interview and the album in the car earlier, and he was saying that he was so tempted. I think it's track one, which you said is a good opening one. He said he's so tempted to put some sort of a dance beat to
Oh yeah,
Ibiza.
absolutely. Well, you see, I have no problem with that. It's like I said about Jude. I mean, she is going out now. She's got a sort of stage name called Madrigal, and she's going out solo doing looping, live looping with all beats and different sound effects and electronica. So
Oh, wow.
absolutely, yeah, so look up Madrigal as well. So,
Okay. I'm
so
going to write that down,
yeah,
Madrigal. We're all going to look up Madrigal.
she's getting involved in sort of all these electronica festivals,
Oh,
playing early music.
brilliant.
And it just shows that, yeah, you can do some. I'm going to have to look at. I can't remember what track one was now. What's he got
I
planned?
can't remember either. I'm
Oh,
sure it was
Quadroon's
track
Delight,
one.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. That song, that tune, Quadling's Delight, is also known as Goddesses. And
Mm.
if you come from the folk world, you won't know it as Quadlings, but every folkie knows Goddesses, and so it's a tune that's still played in pub sessions today. And in fact, someone who bought the CD, that is the CD, by the way, said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I was trying to work out what that tune is. Why do I know that tune? Oh yeah, I was playing it in the pub 2 nights ago." So yeah, it's music travels. That comes from 1590, and it's still in the popular idiom today.
Oh, I love that. That's just amazing that these pieces of music just carry on.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can't, they're good tunes. They're absolutely good tunes. And Goddesses first appeared in print in 1651 with the
mm.
Playford, John Playford's English Dancing Master, and everyone thought it was a 16th century tune, but actually no, he nicked it from the 16th century.
Yeah. Now, people will have heard of probably like William Byrd, Thomas Tallis, and they're the names you think of when you think of 16th century sort of composers. So obviously you feature pieces by William Byrd. Um, how do you balance the well-known with the lesser heard works in your album? Take us through the album, I suppose. Who else do you feature?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you pick up on that because yes, William Byrd is a known name. I mean, he is the big name from the period. Um, but the piece of music that we play by Byrd, you would not have come across. It's not a well-known piece, and actually, it was a keyboard piece, Monsieur's Almain, and it only ever appears as a keyboard piece. Now, I alluded earlier about it difficult finding the music for we're uh, for those who don't follow early music or understand what we're about. We're a consort band. So we're a small. Think of it like a small chamber group, if you like, playing music of this period. And on the continent, in Italy and all over France and in Flanders, there is a really good, strong printing industry. And all of this consort music for town bands and consorts is being produced. And nothing is being produced in England. So if you want to find out what instrumental ensembles were playing in Italy, it's really quite easy. There's loads of music being printed. And the same for Spanish and French and Flemish music, but not in England. And that's because Elizabeth I granted the monopoly to print music to William Byrd and Thomas Tallis. And not only to print music, but to print manuscript. So if you even just wanted to write out your own tunes, you had to draw your own staves or get music in from the continent or to get blank script in. And that's one of the reasons why so much lute song or keyboard music has survived from the 16th century because people could write that down. But there's a real paucity of this consort music. So yes, we've got William Byrd. So there is some Dowland. So you would have heard of John Dowland with his madrigals and lute songs. So there are some consort pieces. So towards the 1590s, late 1590s, you're beginning to get some consort music being written and getting through this printing monopoly. Um, but It isn't until 1599 that there is the first collection of English dance music printed, and that was by Anthony Holborn. So, for people who do know the period and know the instrumental music, Anthony Holborn is a big name because it is the first collection. So lots of groups play the music, but we like to ring the changes because again, we're mixing this wind and strings, which isn't normal, and also we play a piece on crumhorns. And whenever we've performed this piece out in public, everyone is amazed that there's a piece of John Dowland, sorry, a piece by Anthony Holborn that can fit on a crumhorn consort. And crumhorns are those instruments that look like upside down walking sticks. They've got the bend round the end. And they've got a very limited range. And normally, Holborn is played on viol consorts or string consorts or recorder consorts. But again, we try to mix it up. So we're always looking for things that we can arrange and make our own. So yeah, the person who really features quite large on this is, I suppose, anonymous. There's a lot of anonymous pieces. But Christopher Tye is well known, again, someone who was sacred, and it's a piece I absolutely love playing, which is called Farewell, My Good One Forever. It is just the most, it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. And I write about this in the CD notes that it was purported to have been played at the funeral of Elizabeth I. We have no idea. I think someone just thought, yeah, it's a nice title, sounds right, we'll put it in. And you know, Claire, how many red herrings there are written in books that you can go round and go round. There is no record ever anywhere of what was played at Elizabeth's funeral. So it's just a nice story, but it is a beautiful piece of music. So we've taken music that was for vocal music or choral music, and we've adapted it to suit our needs.
So the fact that Tallis and Bird had this monopoly, that must make researching it really, really difficult because
Yeah.
so how is there any other music at all? Did anyone write things down that didn't get printed but
Well,
are in archives
you,
somewhere?
well, you sort of have to be a bit of a detective in a way.
Hmm.
So some of it is really quite easy and obvious. So yes, it's easy to find the Anthony Holborn. That was printed, it's all there. It's easy to find the Dowland. That was printed in his time. Um, um, but other things, we look to, as I said, the English music was beginning to become popular on the continent. And what you had after, of course, when Elizabeth came to power, and although she was quite, she turned a blind eye, I think, to some of the Catholic musicians and composers. William Byrd was outwardly Catholic, and yet she supported him. So, she wasn't going to cut her nose off to spite her face. She let him sort of stay. But obviously, a lot of Catholic musicians did go to the continent when she came into power. And and John Dowland did as well. He did come back, but he did sort of leave for a while. But what you have then is the continental musicians taking up English music that they've heard from these English musicians, and it gets printed in Europe. So you find English music being printed with a different name in Europe. So that's another way. And then the other way you can find out tunes is, so, for example, there's a tune that was printed in Holland in 1551 called the Quarter Brawls. It's a standard. It's a really good boppy tune. It's a fantastic tune to play, and there are plenty of songs in England printed, often with the lyrics, but not with the tune. But what they'll say is to be sung to the tune of, and then you see, such and such, to be sung to the tune of the quarterbrals. Think, so there is this Dutch tune that's known in England sufficiently that it's called by its Dutch name, the quarterbrals. So that then gives us permission, if we're going out with an English program, to say, yeah, we can play this because this tune would have been known in England. And that's just an example of how you go about trying
Yeah,
to sort of put
detective
two and
work.
two together.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it is just finding these things. And a lot of so um in the same way we got Monsieur's Almain from the Fitzwilliam Virginal book, again, we've got other tunes like Nutmegs and Ginger have come from the
Mm.
Virginal book. And the Virginal book, I wrote an article for Tudor Life on the Virginal book it's quite a few years ago now, and he wrote it whilst he was in prison. He wrote all this Francis Tregian, that's his name, Francis Tregian, and it is just this amazing resource of over 300 tunes written out whilst he was incarcerated in the Tower,
Mm.
and he wrote it all down. And you know that it's those sorts of things that we can sort of grasp hold of and say, okay, here's a piece of keyboard music, let's arrange it.
I
um
love people like that either keep a diary or use
yeah.
their time in prison to record things. Or my favorite is to Francis Knowles writing down his children's birth dates in his Latin dictionary. It's like,
Oh,
yes, yes, a Tudor person that actually thinks ahead.
and I think at this point I need to say that Eric, my husband, he is the sort of the guy in tries to keep us all under control, but
Mm.
he does the arrangement. He is the one that takes this piece of keyboard music or one line
Mm.
like Quadling's Delight, and just says, right, let's come up. And there is, I understand now why Tim was saying about that piece, because there's a real sort of nice jazz break going on, and yeah, that's inspired. But
Yeah.
that's Eric that wrote that. That's not in the original.
Oh, okay.
So he's taking the chords that
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
and then okay, let's come up with a pattern.
yeah. Okay.
And I think this is what we try and achieve in PIVA. We're not playing the music exactly as it was written.
Mm.
We take the influences. So, I've said one of the members of the band, Anne, who we're still in contact with. She moved to Wales, but she was into jazz. I mean, she was a real late night jazz person, so she could bring a bit of jazz in. Jude brings a bit of folk. Tony was in a folk rock band, so he brings a bit of that in. And we've these the musicians of the 16th century absorbed their surroundings. They absorbed what they saw and what they heard. There were loads of Italian musicians in the English court, even and in Elizabeth's time, and she brought over from Italy Alfonso Ferrabosco. Alfonso Ferrabosco sort of developed the madrigal, and he brought it to England, and thus then we have the English madrigal as a result. So the English musicians were hearing this Italian form, and the Italian madrigal and the English madrigal are completely different in style. But the English wouldn't have probably up with that format had it not been for the Italians. So what we're doing in PIVA is saying, well, yeah, I love jazz music. I love blues music. Why shouldn't I bring that influence in? Because that's exactly what the Tudor musicians were doing. And Eric said when he started the group, he said, I want to rattle the bars of the English music world, because some people play it very, very straight as written. And that's great. That has a place, but that's not us. We like to have fun with the music.
And that's not Elizabethans either, as you said.
Yeah,
They had fun too.
absolutely. Absolutely. You had a great time.
So what track or perhaps moment on the album is your very favorite? What means most to you personally and why?
Um, I think without a doubt, the last track, which is La Douancella and La Bunette, and that is an example that it comes from a keyboard manuscript, but we've arranged it. La Douancella is me on bagpipes on the top line with what we call a cozy curtal consort underneath. So this lovely, sonorous, bassoony, reedy sound sitting underneath. And then it ramps up into La Bunette, which is a real rollicking dance tune with shawms and hurdy-gurdy and percussion and all the rest of it. And again with bagpipes. And I just love it because I said, right, I want to play this, and I think it can be played on bagpipes. And I did it in one take. So that's why I love it. And that
Oh,
is quite rare, I can tell you, to do that. And I did it in the first take, and and then I said, oh, I'll do another just to be, on the safe side. No, it's the first take. So what you hear on that was just me playing boomf. And that's an achievement because it's a long piece. It goes on for 6.5 minutes.
wow. Yeah. So when you, I mean, your music, your group, and the album, you use period sounds, you're using period instruments. So how do you go about choosing the instruments for each track, each composition? Are you being very traditional? Are you looking at what would have been used, in the court, in Elizabeth's court, or has Eric been creative? And yeah,
No, I mean,
how do you do it?
well, every single instrument that we play would have been known to Elizabeth and her court. So we play accurate reproductions of the instruments of the period. So all our instruments are absolutely spot on late 16th century. So that's a given. And then I think the best way is that we're guided by the music. So that track I was telling you about, Farewell, My Good One Forever, I mean, it's a soulful piece of music. It wouldn't be right to play it on loud, strident instruments, whereas My Lord of Oxford's march, it's a march. So yeah, you want it to sound like a march. And it's so that, yeah, we can play that on shawms. Um, and then so when Eric is arranging the pieces and looking at them, he's got a soundscape in his head. Oh, I think this will sound really good on this combination. And Eric will come in, we have a rehearsal, we get together. Eric will come in and say, right, I want to play this, and Jude can play it on top line on this, and David can come in here, and Kate can play this, and Jane and Tony, you can be doing this. And then we start playing it, and someone will pop up, oh no, I think it's going to sound better on this. And then, and then a lively discussion ensues. And yeah, and so sometimes it might be different. And then sometimes Eric is saying, no, this is how I want it. This is the sound I want. Uh, and we go, oh, yeah. Oh well, we gave it a go. And then sometimes things happen by happy accidents. I said that we're a collective, we can bring things in. So one of the tracks on the CD, Nutmegs and Ginger, which again it was a song. Sadly, we can't find the lyrics to it, but we do know it was a song. And I think on the CD, we play it on a mixture of strings and soft woodwinds. And we came to perform it out in concert. And Kate, I think one of the string players, was couldn't make that gig. So we said, oh, okay, well, we've always played it with string on top. What else can we do? And then suddenly it became a curtal consort. We played it on all on dulcians. And that has now become our favorite arrangement. So something that we started off thinking and had known and recorded as one thing, we now play on a completely different instrumentation. And we're evolving all the time. And even pieces that we've been playing, sometime we get an idea. I mean, there's one track on there, My Linda, which is uh, a piece by Anthony Holborn. We play it on what we call a mixed consort. So we've got strings and we've got woodwind. And we were just saying, oh, can we make a bit more of this piece? And then we suddenly start off with this really nice percussive viol banging the strings, not bowing them. And, that was completely different to how you would have heard us play it maybe 5 or 10 years, which is one of the reasons the recording got a bit extended, was because time moved on and our arrangements moved on. We saying, oh, this is better than that one. So things that we'd already recorded, we re-recorded.
I was going to ask why did it take so long? Because you started pre-pandemic, didn't you?
Yeah, we started recording, although the aim was to get another one straight out after Morisco 2016. I think we were all a bit, oh no, let's just forget recording. It is quite stressful recording. Um, and so we left it a good couple of years, and it was about building up the repertoire and about, well, what can we put on, and what tracks would be work well. And then we started recording. I suppose it would have been late 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020. So we had recorded quite a few tracks, and then the pandemic happened. So there was no music. There was still a concern with, and it wasn't just with PIVA, it was with all vocal singers and with wind musicians about, although the sort of, if you like, the main first phase of COVID had gone, you were expelling air. What was the impact? Could you be in the same room with other musicians whilst you're playing also, so we were very hesitant. And then I think we just lost a bit of impetus. I think, this is not unheard of. You hear so many stories that a lot of people just lost their mojo after COVID. And it's like, and then it was the momentum had gone, and then it was getting it back. And then we said, well, actually, as I said, we've moved on. So some of these, because it was quite slow getting back after COVID, especially for musicians and finding places. I mean, when we started rehearsing, we had to hire. I mean, we normally fitted in a large soundproof room, but we said no, we're too close, and we had to end up finding and hiring a huge hall that we could sort of stand well apart from each other, and things like this. So it was quite difficult, and then it was a question of re-recording some of it, and then and then Kate moved to Hong Kong, and it was just like, and then you've got all the mixing and the mastering and the editing, and yeah. So, and then yeah, it's here, it's out. We're so pleased.
What a relief.
Yeah,
So that means, well, it must mean a lot though to have gone through all that and it finally be here though. You must be
yeah,
so happy.
absolutely. It's and what's really good is, I think you end up, because um as I said, recording is quite painful,
Mm.
because we play pieces. Some of these pieces we've been playing for 15 years. We know them like the back of the hand. We don't need to think about it. And you go into the studio, and you're there with a set of headphones on. You've got a microphone in front of you, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this isn't sounding good. This is not what I want. This isn't the sound. This isn't the feel. And it's a real it is such a pressurized process. So there's not only just the recording, but then it's the going through and it's the editing and it's the listening to it and it's the, is this right? And we had a rule that, that everybody in the group had to be happy. That we weren't going to release a track because what you tend to do when you listen back, you're always listening to, oh, did that, how did I sound? And so you're sort of, oh, that's great. I did really well on that take. That's great. And then someone said, oh no, well I'm not happy with that. I don't want that. And you go, oh yeah, that's my best take. And so you've got to go through that, and then there's all the analysis and the mastering of it. So by the time the CD is actually released, as it was 2 weeks ago, you're thoroughly sick of it. You really are. Absolutely. I don't ever want to hear this again. But we actually finished it in May, and we got it back from the production company in July. So we've been sat on it for a little while, waiting for the right time to release it. And I just thought, well, I better just listen to it, just to double check that everything is okay. And I listened to it, and I think there'd been sufficient time between, the final, that's it, it's going off to production and getting it back, that I thought, oh yeah, this is really good. I really like this CD, which I've not been able to do with sort of quite the same conviction as the other two. I mean, I look back and they're great CDs, but this one I think I think we're all really chuffed with it.
Yeah, I'm always worried when I release a book that I'm going to open it and then find something glaring that I
Yeah,
missed or that, in
absolutely.
editing was
Yeah,
missed. And,
I
you know,
know. Yeah, it's like I do this with my quarterly journal. You read and you read and you read and you proof and I think and you there's that moment where you have to go print, and then it's just like, oh God, yeah, is it
yeah.
be okay?
Yeah, I think we're perfectionists though, aren't
Yeah, absolutely.
we? Now, you mentioned about how you and your husband, Eric, make historical woodwind instruments yourselves. How on earth did you ever get into that? What drew you to it and how on earth did it start?
Well, we've both had sort of slightly different entry points to it. For Eric, he has a craft background, very strong craft background. So he has the skills and the knowledge. But he wasn't necessarily a musician. I mean, he liked music, but he was very much on the craft side. And it was his first wife, Carol, and their friends that were the musicians. And I suppose, in the early 70s, it was when early music, if you like, really took off. I mean, some of your listeners may have heard of David Monroe. And really, David Monroe was really quite key and instrumental during the 70s for launching this sort of popular early music movement. And Eric and his friends went off to a concert to see David Monroe, and they'd been the concert had been playing recorders which were known, but they went to see this concert, and there were all these weird and wonderful instruments, and including the crumhorn. Everyone just loves a crumhorn. And a friend, one of the members of the group, Carolyn, was just next day was walking down in London, central London, and in the shop called Musica Rara, there was a crumhorn in the window, and she went, "Oh, great! I'll buy a crumhorn." Bought this crumhorn, brought it back to the group, and they realised that the sound quality of a crumhorn did not mix with recorders. They're two completely different sounds and sound qualities. And so everyone looked at Eric and said, well, you're the craftsman, make us another. So Eric, with his, he had got some knowledge of musical instruments through having rebuilt an organ for his church. He had moved a great big pipe organ from north down to and fitted it, literally installed it into his local church. So he knew about acoustics and how musical acoustics and how they all work. But with that craft knowledge, he set about making a crumhorn, and it really was, a voyage of discovery. And then he made this crumhorn, and then he got much more involved in it. And this, as they say, the rest is history. And he went on from it, and it was crazy times when everyone was discovering things and making things, and Eric just took it from there. And last year he celebrated 50 years as a professional instrument maker, making instruments from the 16th century. And there's not many people like Eric in the world. He is the only person to make the range of instruments that he does. He is absolutely a unique person. And I got involved basically because I met him. So I came from the playing side. I was a musician, and it just so Eric was teaching instrument making at an adult education college, craft college, and I was with a music group on a music course, and they put the two courses together because they thought it would be a playing course with a making course, and we met there, and so and it's like if you can't beat them, join them. So I've been I did have another profession at the time, but life moves on, and I said, right, that's it. And I started working with Eric probably about 25 years ago now, and so I work in the workshop alongside him. But yeah, so we work together, we play together, we play music together, and yeah, it's a and we do a lot of research. We bounce ideas off, and as you know, you need that person next to you to be your sounding board, and we do that. It's quite reciprocal in my areas of research on social history and delving through my books and coming up with articles and working with the instruments. Yeah.
So, does playing on instruments that you've actually made yourself change your connection to the music that you're playing?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really special feeling, to think, oh yeah, I made this. It's great. I mean, I think any musician will feel a connection to their instrument. I mean, it's why when I see on Facebook that someone's instrument has been stolen. I mean, my heart goes out because you get such an intimate relationship. You have to know that instrument so well in order for you to be able to practice your craft. And so when that instrument disappears, a little piece of you goes with it. And so, yeah, you have a connection. And the fact that it's something that you've crafted and you've maybe researched, and yeah, it gives a little extra glow, I think. But
Mm.
I mean, I have my bagpipes that I haven't made at all, and and there's a very special spot in my heart for all of those as well.
But what are the biggest challenges of maintaining and performing with historical instruments?
The tuning, absolutely,
Okay.
the tuning, for a variety of reasons. I mean, this is for woodwinds. I'm talking from a woodwind perspective. Um, Although stringed instruments have their challenges too, from a tuning point of view. I say that because one of the challenges and one of the enjoyments, which is also a challenge and frustrations of playing these early woodwind, is that they don't have the refinements that came later with the Baroque and modern instruments. So I said that the shawm was or the dulcian were the predecessors of today's oboes and bassoons. So, well, if you can think of a modern orchestral oboe, there's just keys all over it, or a bassoon is just covered with metalwork. And there is a joke which says you can't see the wood for the keys. So yeah, it is bad. But there is a reason for those keys because those woodwind instruments are imperfect. So those keys are a means of trying to get an imperfect piece of wood to sound right. Renaissance instruments don't have any keys. A shawm is just it's that shape. There's no keys on it. So all the work to get those notes in tune, you have to do it all with your embouchure and your fingering. And you have some pretty weird, unstandard fingering. Any reed player will say everything's reliant on the reed, but perhaps your embouchure and some notes are what you call head notes, that you have to just think a note because the note doesn't exist in the instrument, but you have to think it and will the instrument to play it. So there's a lot of that going on. And that, as I said, is one of the rewards of playing it and also the challenges. And then you have the fact that when you're playing with a mixed consort, so you have the strings have gut strings, so they're very susceptible to atmosphere. In fact, all the instruments are, the reed instruments are. So a cold, damp church is perfect for a reed instrument. Woodwinds like cold, damp churches because there's a lot of moisture and the reeds don't dry out. And they might be a bit flat to play with to begin with, but they can, you can get them up to pitch. They're great. Strings absolutely hate a cold, damp atmosphere because they just go soggy. So whereas ours go up, strings go down, and it's no, it's the other way around. We go down, they go up, or whatever, and then in the heat, it goes the other way. And so reed instruments hate heat and dry weather, whereas the strings will love it. So you're balancing the two sounds to try and get the tuning right. And then, you get to a gig and you spend all this time acclimatizing the instruments and you get them balanced. And then the audience comes in and then they breathe and then it all goes out again. So, and the heat of, an audience can again upset the atmosphere. So, and you don't get those extremes with modern instruments. They're all, metal strings don't react in the same way. So modern violins are, a metal or wire, have wire within them. They're whereas the Baroque and Renaissance strings don't. So there's a lot more complexity to playing them from that point of view. And then, as I said, you have all the challenges with trying to get a good sound with using your own abilities, I suppose. And then, and then you have to get a consistent within the reeds. You have to get a consistent sound across all the reeds. It's you have to really play with your ears. If you haven't got a good set of ears, then you can't play the music really.
All those are challenges that your 16th century counterparts had.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
playing those
Absolutely.
instruments, they
Yeah.
were dealing with those challenges too. So
Yeah.
that must also connect you with with the past, with
Oh,
16th
yeah.
century
Yeah. And I think
musicians.
I think one of the privileges of being in PIVA and playing in a lot of historical venues is that we are in venues that we have a real connection with the music. And I think one of my favorite places to have ever played was Acton Court. And it's just an empty shell of a building, but it's oozes atmosphere, absolutely oozes atmosphere. And we go there and you're playing and you're just thinking, Henry VIII, this was built for Henry for one night, 2 nights.
Yes, Henry and Anne Boleyn, yeah.
Yeah. Well, apparently Anne was put in another building that's no longer exists.
Ah, okay.
Didn't stay in there. It was in the grounds. But yeah, so she would have been there. And then
Mm.
you're playing music from the period on instruments that Henry would have known. And with our instruments, our recorders are reproductions of instruments made by the Pisano's, made by King Henry, King Henry's recorder consort. So I don't know if you can see them at the back
Yeah.
there where my finger is. There's a very
Yeah.
big recorder that's based on a Pisano recorder.
Yeah.
So, we're playing these instruments in spaces that
Mm.
would have heard this music before, and there's a I mean, I'm sure there's a resonance.
And do you think the audiences get that feeling as well?
Oh
You know,
yes,
how do they respond to, yeah, it must be amazing as an audience member to go and see a group who are playing authentic instruments, authentic compositions, the sound, and in a historical place like that as well. That must be so
yeah.
special.
Oh yeah, oh, absolutely it is. I mean, I know because I am that audience member as well. I mean, I do the same, and it really is. I mean, the venue is great. I mean, the one we've played in all sorts of different venues, but modern sports halls don't do it for me, I'm afraid. They just don't have the same.
Mm.
I mean,
No, not the same
it's
atmosphere.
great to have live music, and we love playing because at the end of the day, it's the audience reaction
Yeah.
is usually pretty, amazing. But
Mm.
yeah, the venue just so enhances, and absolutely we play quite regularly at Little Morton Hall, which is this iconic black and white Tudor building. And in the summer, we've played concerts in the courtyard, and there you are, just surrounded by this wonderful Elizabethan wonkiness, and on a cobbled courtyard, and with swifts flying overhead, and
Mm.
it really is. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Now I want to turn to you and your work sort of as a researcher and writer. Um, I'd like to know what kind of topics or discoveries have excited you the most when you've been researching early modern music and dance.
Um, I think it's I think it's about overturning common perceptions.
Mm.
I like I think one of the things I love to do is to bring the period to life. And I like putting certainly when we present a concert, it's we don't just play a piece of music. We don't just say, oh, here's the next piece. Because it is a bit of an oral onslaught if you're not used to the instruments. Some of them are quite loud, quite strident. So I build up a program of, and I use my research to enhance the program. So, and hang the pieces of music on the script, if you like. And in doing this, and also it was especially so for when I was writing for Tudor Life. Um, I would come across, I could get all my books out and line them up and then whatever, and just say, actually, no one's really thought about this. This isn't right. This can't be right. And just using the knowledge that I've built up, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Claire, that you have all this knowledge, and my field is a lot narrower than yours. You have quite a wide field of knowledge. Mine's quite specific. And so you just think, no, it wouldn't have been like that. That can't be right. And just blowing those myths that are just there's a lot of lazy writing and a lot of lazy, well, not even research. There's a lot of lazy plagiarism that people will come down, and sadly, a lot of it is on the internet. And that people just see a fact and that's it and regurgitate it. And so it is coming up with those ideas and thinking through an issue, but it's also about putting all of that into context. And I think, you know, I'm a dancer. I love going to live gigs. I love dancing. I love music. I have music on all the time. I've got a wide range of interest in music. Why would you be any different? We know that they paid their bagpipers to come and play for them whilst they were working in the fields. So it's music whilst you work. They had, music at weddings and christenings and engagements was absolutely crucial. When you're having a quiet little chat with your ladies, you want, a bit of music on in the background to enhance, exactly the same today as it was 500 years ago. And it is about taking those things and putting that into context and then finding that little bit of snippet of information that confirms, yeah, I was right, or finding another quote and going back as far as I can do as an independent researcher, going back and finding an original source and or just really interpreting a bit of information that's become standard or overlooked and saying, someone's missed that or not thought that through. That confirms that. So it is about bringing it to life.
Yeah, there's so many assumptions. And as you say, it's because, yeah, things are just regurgitated and regurgitated. And I think people forget where that even came from in the first place
Yeah.
and whether it has any basis at all, in fact.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what you can't see it here, but I've got an old clavichord here, um, that Eric made. It's one of the first instruments he made, big string that's got a great surface on it. I can put my books on there. I used to have another keyboard behind me, but that's gone. And I can lay my books out. If I was researching something, I can lay my books out in printed date of publication order on a subject, and I can see. And it goes back. A lot of the research that I do is obviously with secular music, and there was a guy called Woodfill back in the 50s who wrote this book, an amazing piece of research. And you can see from him, you can just see some of his sentences just just tweaked a little from book to book to book. So I'm not going to copy him, but I've got to find another way of saying what he said. And then by the time you get to something that's printed in 1995, it's so distorted from the original sentence that it's completely lost its meaning or has come out in a different way. And you just
Like
think,
Chinese whispers, or
yeah,
what they call
absolutely,
telephone, I
absolutely.
think they call it in the US. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's really interesting. I've never
yeah.
actually tried laying books
I will
out like
do.
that.
It's a great
Yeah, I will do
exercise.
that. Now you've got a huge interest in the bagpipes, and you're the editor of Chanter, the Journal of the Bagpipe Society. So, talking about myths and facts, do you have a favorite historical fact or a myth that you've busted to do with the bagpipes?
Well, I still have to say, because people will come up to me and they say, "What's that instrument you're playing?" And I say, "Well, it's got a bag and it's got a pipe, but it's not a bagpipe." My favourite myth is, of course, there is something other within this world than the Great Highland Bagpipe. I think everybody thinks about the Great Highland Bagpipe in Scotland, and that's it. So I like, exploring that. The simple myth that I really like to bust is that bagpipes go back into history. That due to a mistranslation, those old academics again, and the same myth being regurgitated, it is absolutely accepted now that there was a mistranslation back in the 19th century or even earlier. Nero was playing bagpipes when Rome burned, not the violin. Because, of course, the violin wasn't a thing back in Roman times. Bagpipes go back to Roman period, and Nero played them. It was a utriculus, and yep, that was it. So that's a good myth to bust. But basically, my love and passion is the 130 odd types of bagpipes that exist other than the Great Highland Bagpipe. And that, in the 16th century, the instrument that the other than church bells, I think the instrument that people would have heard more than any other instrument in England would have been a bagpipe. They were
Really? Wow.
absolutely ubiquitous across England.
Yeah.
Village would have had a bagpiper. And the reason we know this is because the bagpiper was always in trouble. So he was always in. So after this is, I'm going down a rabbit hole now. You have to stop me if you want.
No, 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 this is
But
fine. I like it.
so, as I said, it's people like dancing. You work 6 days a week. The average for your average Tudor, it was a 6 day a week. Sunday was your day off. As we're starting to get towards the end of the 16th century, you're getting the rise of Puritanism, much more strictly religious. You have to go to church. And music and dancing began to be forbidden because it was frowned upon on the Lord's Day. But this is the 1 day off a week. We are going to carry on dancing. So they ignored the law. The village would get club together, get the local piper, pay him his money, dancing on the village green. Church court records are just full of bagpipers being fined on a Monday because they would be sent to court. You were playing on the Lord's Day. Villagers would pay the fine, and then it all happened again the next week. And there's just a fount of knowledge in church court records and in civic records as well, and great things about that. The piper in his defence said, "No, well, the villagers actually went and got me a stool because I was tired from playing for so long." So, and there's some fascinating stories of. There's a village not too far from where I live, which I love telling because the villagers hated the local priest. And so what they did is they got the bagpiper to come and play the bagpipes whilst he was preaching the sermon in the church. And all the village, the church congregation just got up, moved to the back, and started dancing whilst he was still preaching. So he got heavily fined for that one, and then not to be outdone, they said, right, we need a new tactic. So they found out that the priest with his family liked to sing psalms. So in this period, the singing of psalms, singing was a really popular pastime, and singing psalms was very much a thing. And so the priest apparently liked to sing psalms with his family at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. So the villagers got the piper to go and play outside his window every Sunday at 5 o'clock. Now, that I think is just brilliance.
That is. Wow,
And,
I've never realised that when they mention piper, they mean bagpipes.
well, we don't know it's bagpipe. So that as a researcher is where you have problems.
Okay.
Sometimes it is, so you either, if you see piper, you have to look for context. So pipes, so shawms, this reed instrument could be a pipe. A recorder could be a pipe. The other popular instrument of the time for dancing to was a pipe and tabor. So you have a 3-hole pipe and a little drum, a tabor drum, which you tap the rhythm out. That could be a piper, but they're called taborets. So you'll see a tabor player or a taboret. But it's context. So if you're looking at a record for a group of waits, the civic band, the civic town band, or in court, the chances are if it says pipers or four pipers or plural pipers, it will be shawms or recorderies. If you are looking at dancing on a village green, you are talking really only two instruments. You are talking bagpipes or you're talking taboret players. and then usually you would have tabarets. So yeah, you do have to put everything in context. Uh,
Okay.
but very often you'll find one reference to a piper, and then you'll see later on it says take your bagpipes or something like that, and you think, oh yeah, definitely bagpipes.
Okay.
But it was, I mean, we just do know that it was, we don't have the genre of art that they have from Flanders. But you look at Bruegel, you look at all the Bruegel paintings of the same period, 1560s, 1570s. No, the kermis, the village fetes, which are our church ales, the equivalent of, or our wakes festivals, they're the same as the kermis. All these
Mhm.
Bruegel paintings, every one of them's got a bagpiper in or two. Every wedding celebration has got a bagpiper in it. It's the instrument of the people. And you're a one-man band. They could only afford one musician, perhaps. And because you've got drones, you've got, you are very much a one-man band. You've got that
Mm.
full sound without needing anything else. You can be heard over people chatting and dancing.
Now we're all going to be signing up to join the Bagpipe Society. That's fascinating. I never realized that the bagpipes were so
Yeah.
huge in that
Oh,
time.
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Major
Okay.
instrument. And
Okay. Now I'm going to put. Sorry. Go on. Go
I
on.
think
You were
it
going to
still
say
is, and
something.
you still see that
Oh yeah.
in some cultures today, and in
Yeah.
Greece, and yeah, I mean, it's very much. I mean, it's like a lot of traditional instruments. It's undergoing a revival, um, because for various reasons. I think this is why I find it fascinating. I mean, in my last edition, I covered bagpipes from Estonia, bagpipes from northern Greece, from Macedonia, and bagpipes from Hungary. And what you do, it's not just about the instrument, it's about the culture, it's about the traditions, and you find out about so much more than just a musical instrument.
Mm. Wow. Okay. To bring things to a close, I'm going to do
Okay,
quick fire round now. Okay. Favorite Renaissance composer?
anonymous.
That's cheating.
No, because I've played so many bagpipe tunes that I've had great fun, and I've no idea. No, there are so many, but no, poor old Anon, he's completely
Yeah.
disregarded. But
He's really good as well.
yes, he had all the best tunes.
Okay, anonymous. Okay. If you could time travel back to the Elizabethan period and hear one Elizabethan musician perform live, who would it be? Or to hear the work of a composer?
I think I'd like to go and meet my friend Antonio Bassano because he must have such a fascinating story. He worked for the Doge. He was an instrument maker. He was a musician. He was a really good negotiator. He got a really good deal with Henry to come over here. He moved first of all into Whitefriars with his brothers. He set up there. He then moved out. He made good, and he moved out to Kent, and he was upwardly mobile. But he worked for Henry. He worked for Edward VI. He was in Mary Tudor's court, and he was in Elizabeth I's court. So he was a royal musician. His instruments were described more beautiful than any jasper. I mean, I want to go and meet him and have a say, how did you do that? What's your secret?
So you'd have him round for dinner then, because
I
I
suspect
always
it would.
like
Yeah,
to ask that as
yeah.
well.
I think
Who
Eric,
else
Eric
though?
and I would. I think a
Two
really good.
more. If you had two more,
I think
who
a
would
really
you?
good dinner party because I liked it giving dinner parties. So you like to get
Mm,
the mix, and I think my friend Elizabeth, because she would have heard his music.
mhm.
And I would like Will Shakespeare around
Oh,
because one likes to have connections because Antonio Bassano, we know that where he lived was just round the corner from Shakespeare. As I said, they were a family of brothers, and Baptiste Bassano was the father of Emilia Bassano, who was the Dark Lady. And the Dark Lady, because she was Italian, of course, and she married Nicholas Lanier, who was also a musician at Elizabeth's court. And I think, there is this amazing woman, there is this amazing poet and playwright with this amazing knowledge, with a fantastic musician and instrument maker. I
perfect.
think that would be a really good dinner party conversation.
Definitely. Okay. Favorite instrument to play and favorite one to listen to?
Well, I don't think you're going to have any surprise when you say when I say bagpipe, but
Hmm.
I have 14 bagpipes and I am thoroughly at this particular moment in time enjoying exploring a new bagpipe. To me, it's a reproduction of a bagpipe dated to 1710 from an area around Limoges in France called the Grande Cornemuse à Miroir. And it's a big pipe, which translates as big bagpipe with mirrors, and it's all inlaid with these amazing mirrors, and it's a big bagpipe with a colossal sound, and it's just amazing. So that's my instrument. But to listen to, I love piano music. Not early music, I mean, Nina Simone, Keith Jarrett, Chopin, it's just, I think as an instrument, you've got so many sounds and so many styles and so many different varieties of music that can be played on it. And I can't play it for toffee. So yeah.
Okay. Favorite modern band or performer?
Oh, that is so difficult. I don't have one. I can't begin because I love blues, I love jazz, I love rock, I love early music, I love classical music, baroque. I can't begin. But if I was choosing early music, I think La Peggiata from Europe, a French group, La Peggiata, is just amazing. And Piffero, which is an American band, which is very similar makeup from our band. Um, we've very much inspired by them. Um, Jazz, Nina Simone would definitely be on my dinner list as well. And oh, I could just go on. I could just go on and on. So I'll stop there.
Oh, thank you. So after the Faerie Round, what's next for PIVA? Have you got any live performances or future projects on the horizon?
Well, we've got Christmas
What are you
coming
up
up.
to?
So we've got Christmas coming up. So we've got a few. We're actually quite quiet as a group. It's got a bit more difficult for us since COVID. I think audience habits have changed. And music promoters are a bit more wary. People aren't going out in the same way or leaving it to the last minute. And we are niche. We aren't we fall between stones because we are this popular music group. So we're not high end early music and we're not folk. So we are a difficult band. We're great with people where we've played. People say, "Oh, we want you back." So we're quite quiet on the concert front. We've got Norway. We're going up to Norway. We've been there a few times. We've been invited back. But what I'd really like to do is to stage some concerts. This is what I'm working on now. I've been mentioning the Bassanos. Um, I'd really like to hire Whitefriars, where Bassano's first settled when they came over, and there's a great room up there that is for hire. And I think doing a Bassano location specific tour would be great because there's a Bassano that's buried from the 18th century in Lichfield, um, in Lichfield Cathedral. And his tomb's amazing. It's got a beautiful silk moth, still with this silk moth motif. And just all these different locations in Kent where Antonio moved out to, and finding places that the Bassanos lived and worked and do some sort of really, and that's a good cross between our Italian repertoire and our English
Mm.
repertoire to bring those in. So that's what I've got cooking in my brain at the moment.
Okay. And I will be sharing links, but where can people get hold of the Faerie Round?
Okay, so we have a website which is piva.org.uk, or we are on Bandcamp. So if you go onto Bandcamp and type in PIVA Renaissance, there are quite a few PIVAs because PIVA we found is a bit like for an Italian saying it's a musician. So if you're a PIVA, you're a musician. So one of the places we played in Italy, we've been to Italy and played in this area, and there was a whole telephone directory, about 3 pages of PIVAs. It's like, what? So we played a PIVA dance to a Mr. PIVA, who was the mayor of the town we were playing in. So yeah, so if you Google PIVA Renaissance, you'll find us on Bandcamp and you'll find us on Google. So yeah, and we're holding back putting the Faerie Round on iTunes and Spotify for the moment until
Okay.
we've got our CD sales.
Mhm.
But you can find our earlier recordings on iTunes and Spotify and Deezer and all the other sort of streaming platforms.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Jane. This has been a pleasure. I've learned so much. I'm now going to go down a rabbit hole with bagpipes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well,
So yeah, thank you.
I can carry on with you if you wish when the recording stops.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. It's been really,
Okay.
really lovely. It's been a true honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks. Brilliant. Bye.